Jade, good to see you. Welcome to Popternative.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
It's really crazy because, so much happens before you go to camera and all my friends are dead, right? You're discussing the characters, you're figuring everything out. So from a storytelling acting perspective, you could see it as two journeys, right? Before filming the movie and then after filming the movie? Or do you see it as one big journey with multiple steps in between? I'm curious about that.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. I would like to think that it's really one big journey. I mean, I think before I was given the script and sort of signed on to this probably a year before filming.
Mhm.
Um, so I was sitting with it for a while, but it didn't feel. I mean, you never know with films if they're gonna move forward or not. It's a wild industry. So I was really excited about it, but it wasn't until like the that month of filming, like right beforehand, that I really was prepping it and able to like have the time with it, and it was moving forward. Um,
Yeah.
and it does feel like the point is telling a story, and it's each stages of telling a story, and there's the preparation process and all of that, and making sure that you understand the tone and you understand what you're trying to do and how do you take on this role, and then there's during filming, and then there's after. Like each point of it is part of the process of just telling stories.
No, that's really well said. You look at a film like this, and it's a horror film, it's a thriller, it's got the slasher gore component and everything, but it's over the top, it's out of control, it's a bit funny at times. What is that kind of script to screen journey for you as an actor? Kind of reading the script and then seeing it come to life on like Video Village and on the screen. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So I think for me, being able to have a lot of discussions with Marcus Dunstan, who's the director of our film and such a fearless leader. I adore that person so much. He's an incredible artist. So for me, it was really sitting down with him and making sure that I understood the tone of the film and like
Totally.
really what his vision was and what he was going for. Because in the script and in the film, you see a lot of gore, you see a lot of humor, you see there's just very heightened circumstances, and there's also a lot of heart in the film. So being able to balance all of that and like figure out what dose of each was needed in order to tell the story that he wanted and that I was interested in, really came from discussions with him, analyzing what makes a good final girl, and watching other great slasher films, and then
Mhm.
um, deciding and figuring out how I was going to put my own spin on that.
Absolutely. And you're so good in this film. Like, congratulations.
Thank
Like,
you so much.
so good. And it really is 0 to 100 though, this film, right? Like in terms of like things that happen. Like, did it read like that? Because like from a viewer perspective, it's like like, okay, like this is happening now. Okay. Like
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I got so excited about, was it was like everything was just so big and heightened and crazy that it made it really hard to predict what was going to happen.
yeah.
Because like I didn't think they were going to go there, and then suddenly you look at what's happening, you're like, okay, they really went there. They're going there. So
Oh,
it
they go
was
there. You all go
they
there.
go there. We go there. There's certain kills in this film that I know I was there when we were filming it, and I was watching it at Tribeca, and I was like covering my eyes because it was just
Yeah. Well, I was
crazy.
able to see it without knowing much about it, right? Like I said, it was the
Right.
Tribeca days. You don't know much about it. And like I definitely like yeah, like I knew it was like a horror film, but like I didn't know about, like I said, the 0 to 100, and then it just made it more fun. I loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But like, well, that's my next question because premieres at Tribeca. Horror movies have always been around, Jade, but there has been this like incredible like surge, right, of popularity and interest, and like the genre is just getting smarter and more innovative, and there's more ways to scare people. What is it like working in horror at a time, like working on a horror movie at a time where there is such a buzz around it, so to speak?
It's really exciting. I mean, I think I can really only speak for myself. I love the genre of horror. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's a really fun genre, and there's a lot that you can explore about the human condition in horror, right?
Yeah.
Um, such a fun movie going experience. And I think particularly after the pandemic, I think a lot of people want that experience and crave that experience of going to a movie and getting lost in something. And horror, I think, offers a great avenue for that. But to take on this particular subgenre of horror too, of like the slasher comedy,
Yep.
was just so much fun, and it was such a treat. And to do it in a time where people really want to watch films like that is also just as gratifying, because of course we want to make stories that people see, so
Yeah.
it's exciting times right now.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that about like kind of the different, like the evolution of it a little bit. Cause it's like, yeah, there's like different ways to scare people. Like people are scary, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, people are scary. And it's, you can explore a lot of different kinds of themes with horror, you know?
So if you look at a lot of your past projects, what I think is really cool is not only have you been able to work in so many different genres, Jade, but you're playing all these different characters. And I'm just curious, if you look at something like All My Friends Are Dead, and then you look at your past projects, how separate are past projects in terms of, preparing or bringing things to something like All My Friends Are Dead? Like, do you bring things like mindset preparation from things like Big Sky or School of Rock to something like this, or are they completely separate after you wrap them?
As far as my process on developing a character, yes,
Okay.
I bring things into it because it's a learning experience, like each experience informs me on a new avenue to go for the next one. So in that sense, yes, there's certain things that I learned from doing Destroyer or Little Fires Everywhere that I still use to this day.
Yep.
And that in that sense, yes. But I also feel like it does change. Like it's not a one size fits all process for me. And there's certain things that I can sometimes surprise myself on what I end up needing that's different. Like for All My Friends Are Dead specifically, the process for me was a lot more physical than I was than I was expecting. I would go on set and like I would need to like literally before a take while we were rolling, like I would go down on my hands and knees and I would scream and I would, like it was very visceral and I needed to feel it in my body to get to the point that my character gets to, which I didn't need to do on School of Rock. But it's all dependent on the film.
You were on a TV show based on my favorite movie of all time. It's pretty crazy. School of Rock. School of Rock is my favorite movie of all time. It is. 100%.
I love this. It's a classic.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Oh, there's so many lines. It's crazy. It's funny you mentioned at the beginning. It just reminded me because getting back to horror movies and everything, you mentioned like the Final Girl and everything. There's a board game called Final Girl. I was just at a store, just saw it. Like, there's like a horror movie board game called Final Girl.
Really?
Yes. I mean, it's huge right now. There's all these like horror movie board games. There's like a Scream board game. Like, it's so in right now. It's wild.
Fun.
It's not even spooky season yet, too. It's not even spooky season yet.
But I think horror movies can be, that's such a like great summer movie experience
especially
too.
This one, All My Friends Are Dead. Plug.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely like a summer anthem movie.
Well, I'm excited to ask you this, and you can answer this in different ways. I mean, okay, so it's not a spoiler, right? But technology's involved with this movie, right? Like there's like you're like the characters are texting each other. You see the text messages. There's live streams and everything, but a lot of that is like done in post, right? Like you don't see it in everything. Do you think about like what is that like, knowing that there's like in the script, like, we're gonna see text messages and like live streams, but like you're just like with each other and like you're not thinking about all that? Like I'm just curious, like do you think about that stuff? Like do you think about post? Like are you in the moment? Like I'm just curious about that a little bit because it's a big part of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, while I'm filming, if my character's supposed to be aware of it, then I make myself aware.
Okay, and yeah, your character is getting text a lot.
Yeah. So when she's getting texts, I make sure that I'm aware of it, and I'm not gonna do one of these like, oh, I have a text going on and I'm not looking at it or whatever,
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, I care about post, and I didn't produce this or anything, but I do have a lot of interest in like being a part of like making a film as great as
Yeah.
it can be. So even when I wasn't working, I was, at Video Village watching other things and very curious and stayed connected with Marcus during the post process to like see what would happen and how it would turn out. But on the day when I'm filming, I'm really just aware of it to the degree that my character is.
Totally. I just bring it up because it's a big part of the film. Like when people see it, like the technology is like very present in the film. You know what I mean?
It's a character in itself.
Yes.
The technology is a character in itself because the film, though it's fun and it's campy and it's wild and all these things, it also does, there's a huge theme of this film is social media and how that can damage the way that we see one another and the way that we see ourselves, and it can push people to do things that they wouldn't do if it wasn't for the peer pressure of social media. And also exploring like voyeurism and like that within a horror film too. It's like you're allowing people to watch you and to bring people into your world, and that makes a great premise for a horror film. So, that's another
Sounds
side
very
of it.
familiar to me. About
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Just
Yeah, very, very familiar.
Yeah. Last question before we wrap up. I mean, Jade Pettyjohn is a storyteller. That's what you do. We kind of established that, there's different kind of methods and preparation for different roles and kind of being in the moment and everything. But what excites you the most about being a storyteller these days, in your opinion?
I feel like we are about to experience a renaissance in the industry. We had a global pandemic and a strike and all kinds of things that made it very hard for people to work in this industry. And we got out of that. And I think anytime you have an experience where like a group of artists can't easily make something, it creates this sort of like necessity or drive to overcome that, like as a group to overcome that. And I feel that right now. And I feel like also just audiences, I feel, are really interested in new stories that haven't been told before. And so I get excited about being a part of that. And really the reason why I love stories so much is when I go to into a theater and I look up at a screen and it makes me want to go off and live or go off and do something, and it makes me feel, and I feel inspired to have some sort of adventure of some kind. Like that's what I love about movies, about watching movies, and to on the other side of that, and to tell stories that make people want to go off and go off and experience life is an exciting thing for me.
That was a fucking amazing answer to the question.
Oh, thank you.
And I can't wait for people to check out All My Friends Are Dead. It's so much fun. Jade, so great chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for talking to me. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Your Instagram account is the best way for people to keep up to date with everything, right?
Yeah. And my website too.
It's just your name, right, on Instagram. There's like BTS. There's probably going to be some BTS stuff. All My Friends Are Dead. I think Fumiko Whitney has been posting a lot of it too. I just interviewed her too. So we love the BTS because I'm sure you had them ready to go and now you can finally post it, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Be prepared. It's all getting unleashed.
Awesome. This has been Pop Turn. If you do.com/PopTurn for previous episodes. Until next time, it's Jade Pettyjohn and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popturnative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popturnative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.